people. That's still a thing that you have to remind people of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whew. All right, let's see here. I think I got everything ready. Sweet. Yeah, fantastic. Yay, Graciana. Hopefully we've got some repeat attenders here. So it's really nice. Joe, we've got, as I was telling you before, these are open to people outside of Georgia, of course. And which is nice, but it's mostly Georgia people. Those are kind of like the first on the list in terms of kind of who got the communication. But it's so nice hanging out with some of the same people repeatedly. It's like, oh, hello. And you can then kind of continue conversations or bring up something that you maybe thought of since the last time you spoke or that kind of thing. It's been it's been fun for me. So hopefully other people it's been fun for as well. But looks like we've got Cecilia, we've got Graciana. We'll go ahead and start. They have joined us before, but Joe, I know you haven't since last spring, right? So those of you watching the recording, my name is Meredith White. I teach Spanish 1 and 2 just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in Metro Atlanta. These are, as we were just saying, open to Georgia friends, but also just anybody anywhere, really. So if you're watching the recording later, yay, Juliana's here. If you're watching the recording later, this is the last one. This is actually number 11 of 11 sessions. Yeah, save the best for last, obviously. And so I'm excited to have Joe here. Joe, will you tell us, I know where you are and what you do, but will you tell us where you are and what you do?
No worries. Well, first of all, thank you ever so much, Meredith, for giving me the opportunity of coming onto the, I don't know officially what this is, if it's a webinar or.
Yeah, officially, I suppose. Yeah, exactly, a webinar.
Okay. So thank you ever so much. Yeah. So my background is, I was a languages teacher for 13 years. I taught French at a high school level, or K-12, I suppose, as you'd say, for 3 years, and then 10 years at middle school level, 9 to 13-year-olds. And I live on the Isle of Wight in the UK, which is a 25-minute ferry journey away from Southampton, which is in the middle of the south coast of England. And for the last 12 years or so, I've been an independent. And the lights have gone out.
That's how they fire you, is they just turn the lights out.
For the last 12 years or so, I've been an independent languages consultant. Before the pandemic, I was traveling around the world, running training and speaking at conferences in places like Australia, New Zealand, North America, South America, the Middle East, all over Europe. And now, as a result of the pandemic and Brexit as well, it means that I'm having to do nearly everything via webinar, although I am starting to do a few face-to-face sessions as well, which is fantastic as well. So, and I'm also sort of, according to The Guardian a few years ago now, the man behind the MFL Twitterati, which has been going for many, many years, officially around sort of 2008 it started. So it's the equivalent of like the Lang Chat community.
I was going to say, it's like it's like just a couple years older than Lang Chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and I've connected with lots and lots of world language educators in the States. I did a podcast with Noah Geisel in 2019, which we're hoping to resurrect at some point, but we've both been incredibly busy. And I'm very active on Twitter, and I did over 140 webinars for the Association for Language Learning as well, that we called Tilt. And Meredith was one of the speakers on that series. So so that's a few things. And I've got 34,000 followers on Twitter as well.
Right, it's insane to me. Where I'm just like, how do people have tens of thousands of? Well, you share so much amazing stuff, so I know people really, really appreciate that. And it's like we were saying before, if you don't have, and I know, like we've said, Angela's here. I know we've said this in previous ones. Like, if you're a French teacher. And for a lot of people, that's not I'm a French teacher, it's I'm the French teacher. And, for Chinese and Latin and German and some of the German, not so much, and Latin, not so much, but some of the less commonly taught languages, Vietnamese, Russian, like here at least, you're the only person in the district sometimes. You're the only person in your network of schools that does what you do. And so places like Twitter, like you just mentioned, having Twitter followers, like places like Twitter and different virtual spaces that we can collaborate on are invaluable for so many people, I think. I don't know if you've seen the same thing in the UK or like in your travels or kind of what the situations are, but for us, the more rural you get, obviously the fewer people, but the fewer, the less your program is able to offer in terms of languages. So sometimes it's like you talk to somebody and they are the Spanish teacher in their town. And I'm like, Spanish even? How is that? But I grew up in a town that same thing. There was one Spanish teacher at the one high school, and the graduating class was like 60 kids or whatever.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, in the UK, in relation to say language departments at secondary school level, there are definitely fewer people, I would say, in departments now compared to say 10 years ago. So I would say
okay.
a standard department would be anywhere between 3 and 5 people. You might get some departments that have got many more than that. It depends. I think what you're talking about, say, like being the one language teacher in a school, that would certainly be the case in primary level. So
Okay.
you'd have, like, say, the French teacher who and then if that person then leaves and moves on, then they have to find someone else to do French or Spanish, whatever it might be. So it's, that's a real challenge in itself, I think. But certainly the numbers of people in departments have gone down simply because the number of graduates now coming through with languages is reducing. Lots and lots of different universities are closing down their language departments, their teacher training in languages. The numbers are going down, unfortunately. And but there we are. But let's be positive today. Let's be.
No, but I mean, I think that information is so interesting, and I think directly relates to us talking about Twitter Spaces for educators, and really just like spaces in general. Because if you have, and I know we've said this in previous ones, and we spoke about this last spring too, but if you're not only the only one, you could be surrounded by people who don't collaborate, who don't talk to each other, who don't hang out. Like, teaching is such a social profession, and then it's incredibly isolating at the same time. And suddenly you're like, I'm in a department of 12 and nobody talks to anybody, and you're congenial, but you're not collegial, because to me, as collegials, having those honest conversations, those really like, pushing each other to be a better team. And then to me, congenial is just like, good morning, if even that. And you've got people who haven't talked to each other in years because someone, said that passe composé was stupid 20 years ago, and you're like, oh my God, is that really what, is that really what people are fighting about? So when you think about Twitter, and obviously specifically Twitter Spaces, but maybe just like teacher Twitter in general. And I know a couple people on here do use like teacher Twitter. You gotta have all the right things muted, right? I have all them like, no, I don't want that. And then it can be a really fun place. Tell us how we can use Spaces, or even just anything else that you've seen about Spaces or Twitter related. First
of all, I'd like to echo what you've just said. Certainly, the people in the the MFL Twitterati community in the UK, although the hashtag is used by people from all over the world and has been for many years, I totally agree that they feel this sense of solidarity. This sort of, it's a very positive space to be in. Just like with Lang Chat, the fact that you can share ideas, you can be enthusiastic and not be ashamed about being enthusiastic, which if you're working in a department and you have colleagues who for whatever reason don't share that enthusiasm, then you can be as enthusiastic as you want to be on Twitter, which is amazing. So so particularly talking about Twitter Spaces, I mean, Twitter Spaces is something that came up on my radar during the pandemic. I'm sure we've all heard of Clubhouse. If you haven't heard of Clubhouse, that was really sort of like the first tool of this type, which could be classified as social audio. If you do a search for hashtag social audio, then you'll find lots of examples of different tools. There's been quite a few services now that have come up which could be regarded as social audio, but Clubhouse certainly was the first one. And I think a lot of the reason it took off, or the reason that people were saying that it was taking off, was for a variety of reasons. Through Zoom fatigue, one sort of argument is through Zoom fatigue, the fact that you don't have to make sure your hair looks nice and all this sort of thing. If it's just audio, you can just listen in. You can eavesdrop if you like on an audio conversation. You can ask to speak. You don't have to be worried about how you look. You can so it's an easier point of entry, if you like, from that point of view. And then when I saw that Twitter were talking about doing an equivalent like Clubhouse, I got very excited, because similar to what you're just saying, actually, in lots of ways, I think you have to choose where you're going to spend your time, because there's a finite amount of time that each teacher has. And if you're into social media, you can definitely spread yourself too thinly if you're not careful. So personally, I do a lot of my sort of conversation communication on Twitter, but I'm also in lots of Facebook groups, which I find really interesting as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, so that was fascinating the way that Clubhouse had taken off, and they got thousands and thousands of members very quickly. And then Twitter announced their equivalent, which they call Twitter Spaces. So for those people that haven't heard of Twitter Spaces, it is very similar to Clubhouse. In other words, you can start a space. You have to be on a mobile device to start the space. So if I've got my phone here actually, so basically what you have to do is on the Twitter app. Let me just doing this in real time. Let me just put my password in. Hang on.
Oh, story of my life. Again. I'm like, what did I call this? Did I have to suggest
exactly?
One? Is it my usual?
Here we are. I should be in right now. So if you got the Twitter app, it has to be the Twitter app. There we are. If you're on the Twitter app, to launch a space, what you do is you tap on the standard tweet icon, which is on the Android phone, bottom right, and you'll see that at the top there it says Spaces.
Okay.
So I'm not going to launch one right now, otherwise that would be a bit weird. But what you would do is you tap on Spaces, and then having tapped on Spaces, you would then let's do that again. Having tapped on Spaces, you'll see that it says name your space. So obviously you put the name in. You can see that it says record space. Now that wasn't available when Twitter Spaces first launched, but now if you're on a mobile device on iOS or on Android, you can record any space, and the space can be as long as you want. I don't think there's any limit. So there are some spaces that have been like 24 hours or what have you. Not that I'm saying that you'd want to talk for 24 hours, but that's what some people do.
Sure, like a
or they change hosts or whatever. They change hosts. Now the other thing you'll see is you've got the calendar, the timetable option. So you can schedule your space to start at a certain time. So what some people do is they make like a graphic using Canva or whatever it might be, saying, join me on my space at this time on this day next week. And so you can then advertise it to tell your followers that you're going to be there then. And that's basically it. And then people can then join your space. You can set it up so that you can then choose to allow people the mic, very much like Zoom. So people can request the mic. I wouldn't set it up so that anyone can join the mic without asking. Otherwise, you could easily get a cacophony of noises if you're not careful.
Right.
And that's basically it. And then the other thing that is important to say as well, at the time of this recording, it's not possible to set up a space on the browser version. So if you're on your Windows PC or your Mac or what have you, then you can listen to a space, but you can't create a space. You have to be on mobile to do that, which I think is a bit frustrating personally. And it certainly makes, if you wanted to record on a nice microphone, as I've got right now, which I will show you very quickly.
Yeah.
Which is R2100X, which is a dynamic microphone, which I got recently, having got back into podcasting again. And my sort of plan around using Spaces is to record my audio locally, so to get good quality audio sound, and then to take the recorded audio from Twitter Spaces, which is compressed audio, so a little bit like the audio that you get with Zoom, and then edit it together and make it sound really nice. Now, the other, I must say at this point, unless do you have any questions at this point, Meredith? Because I can go on and on and on.
I didn't even know. Please, this is so interesting to me. And what I'm thinking about, if you know, well, it doesn't matter who they are, but a couple of teachers on Twitter who I think you might also follow, we have been talking about trying to get like this, like a really comfortable, like casual conversation about a thing. And we've been talking with we've been trying to find / talking about like low maintenance options. And this sounds like one, like you said, if you've got someone who can create an image and now it's, okay, like you said, join us Tuesday at 4 p.m. Meredith and Joe, we're going to talk about blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like a live podcast, basically, but like through Twitter. And I'm digging. So I was telling Joe earlier, I've only clicked on Spaces once. And then I was accidentally in one. Like I wasn't, like I was holding my phone, and then you know how like you'll just like click stuff and then you're like, what am I doing? And it did like, just like it was there where it just like popped up. And I was like, who's talking? Like what's happening? So I had no idea that you could do, like you just said, like the set reminder piece there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that's really, oops, I'm too close. Whatever. It's because they turn the lights off. That's really cool. So you could set, like people could set a reminder. You put out that graphic. You go, okay, we're talking about starting the school year. God, kill me now. If that's like we're talking about ending the school year, but in July or August, if we're saying starting the school year, getting that motivation back, we're going to be chatting about, whatever. It could be just like that, like just an informal, what did you call it? Social voice?
Social audio. So
Incredible.
social audio is the official, well, I say official, whatever that
love
means,
that.
is what people use as the term to describe
awesome.
Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse, and all those different tools. So just to clarify, then on your screen just then, what you were showing was the new button, which is now a microphone. It used to be 4 little
Yes.
diamonds,
Okay.
but now it's a microphone. So when you tap on the microphone, you can then see all the spaces which are live.
Right.
It must be said could have inappropriate titles, but
Sure.
but yeah, so you can just then listen in, as it were, and then as I said before, some people allow you to ask for the mic, and some people don't. So I've listened into quite a few spaces, but I must say at this point that if you're interested in this conversation, the podcast that you must listen to is the following, which is called All Things Audio. So you can just find it. You can find it in all the places that you find podcasts. All Things Audio has blown my mind for a long time now in relation to Twitter Spaces. It's not just Twitter Spaces; it's anything to do with audio, as the name would suggest. So it's an American Twitter marketer called Madeline Sklar, which is MADALYNSKALAR. Madeline Sklar, that's her Twitter handle. And then the other person on the podcast, the other co-host, is Suze Cooper, who's from the UK, and her Twitter handle is, let me just find it now because I've written it all down, is Big Tent Social. Big Tent Social. Okay. So BIGTENTSOCIAL. Now, I've learned so much from these guys. So what they do is on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock UK time, they have their Twitter space and they talk about, unsurprisingly, all things audio. But what they do is they record themselves locally in the way I talked about. So they've got nice microphones. They record themselves into like a mobile recorder, etc. And then Madeline then sends Suze her audio, and then they get the recording audio from the space from Twitter. It used to be, before they made it possible to record the audio, you had to request. You can go to Twitter and you can request all the files that you've sent in the last 30 days, which, if you're a big Twitter user, is a lot of information with it. And within that, you'd have a folder called, I can't remember exactly what it's called, something audio or media or what have you. And then within that, you'd have the audio from the Twitter space. But then they made it possible to record the Twitter space from within the app. So what they do is the first 30 minutes or so, they have their chat when it's just Suze and Madeline talking, and then they open it up to questions, and then they have people from around the world asking questions, and then they take that audio and they splice it together with their nice quality audio. And so that works fine as long as people don't talk over each other. Otherwise, that becomes very difficult to edit. So I love that as an idea, because I'm really into podcasting, as I'm sure you know, but also just the way the quality of the content is amazing. So they just talk about, just like little changes in the app, and they'll talk about that for, say, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and the implications and how people are using it. So if you want to know about social audio, it's the best place that there is, as far as I'm aware, of finding out about how best to use Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse. And then as a result of that, I was, of course, as I normally do, was thinking, well, how can this be used in education? But I'm sure we'll come on to that in a moment.
Yeah. Can you see my phone at all? I hooked up my phone.
Not yet. It's just coming up to, it's saying screen sharing at the minute.
Oh, sad. Okay, we'll see if it happens. Because I wanted to show exactly like what you were showing, what it looks like when you've got like the like you said, the conversation's happening all at once. So it sounds like you can curate, like you said you were wanting to do, like, could you curate a little bit of live with the already pre-recorded, or what would be the appeal of using something pre-recorded and not just having like a podcast for that?
Yeah.
Or,
So just to be very clear, the conversation is live, but
Mhm.
Sue's and Madeline's audio in the conversation is the audio from their mobile phone. So the audio quality will not be as good compared to when they're using a nice microphone. So in real
Okay.
time, they're recording themselves on their microphones, and then when they get the audio from their own tracks, plus to get the audio from Twitter Spaces, then they then edit
Right.
it together as a podcast.
Okay.
Because yeah,
Okay. Gotcha.
does that make
So it's
sense?
like the final product. So yeah, it's almost like kind of creating the space, like, yeah, I don't know, like creating it and then adding to it with your
Yeah,
own.
or well, I think if I don't know about you, but certainly when I'm listening to a podcast, if the audio quality is very good, or if it's very bad, let's say, or not brilliant,
Right.
that can put off a lot of people. So I think that having
That's
that
true.
sort of conversation at the beginning, which is high quality audio, and then having people who are basically talking on their mobile phones. I mean, you can set it up. You can set it up so you're using a nice microphone with your mobile phone, or you could be using a third-party tool like a
Right.
Rodecaster Pro, but they're about $1,000 or something to buy one of those.
Oh.
So it's yeah, exactly. I mean, they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant, and there are some people that sound amazing when they come on to do their like questions from the audience type thing. But most
Yeah.
people, they sound quite compressed audio, as you get with Twitter Spaces, which is fair enough, because the bigger the file, the better the quality, but then the more bandwidth you need for that to stream and all the rest of it. So I get that, but I think it's a really nice idea to make a podcast based on that sort of that conversation, that the fact you can have people from literally anywhere in the world connecting together, but having that good quality audio is brilliant as well.
Yeah, it's like an unplanned webinar, but like you said, just the audio of just like, hey, everybody, whoever can chime in, just kind of like a share.
Yeah.
Space,
So
I don't know.
Basically, Madeline and Sue's, they use Notion, which I've not used personally, which is, it sounds to me like a Google Doc basically, but they write notes or things they want to talk about in that document using Notion. Then they do their 30 minutes. I mean, it's not scripted, of course. They've just got, because it's all live. Everyone's listening live, and then they bring in the audience afterwards. And then in the edit, I would imagine they do a bit of finessing and edit things out, etc. But yeah, I think it's a great formula.
Cool. It's like a show. Like
it is like a show, yeah. It is like a show, yeah. And they've done 40 episodes, I think, so far. So they've been going for a long time. They do one a week, but there's been some spaces like over Christmas, for example, when they have a break, and sometimes Suze will do the show when Madeline's not available, and vice versa. But I just think there's a format. I mean, I'm sure you're the same. You get excited about like new things or things you haven't seen before. So moving on to education, I was thinking, well, how could this be used? So far, probably in the educational sphere in the UK anyway, there's probably the best example is Saturday Ed Chat, which used to be on Clubhouse, but then they decided to move to Twitter Spaces. And I think I'm right in saying they do one every week on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock UK time. So that would be in the middle of the night for people in the States. But I'm not sure if they record the sessions, but when you do record them, they're available for 30 days. So it's not like permanently there, but you could, once you've made your recording, there are ways and means using tools like Audacity, etc., to then rip that audio so you've got it permanently. But if you don't do that, then the link will still be there. But if you try to listen to it, it will go after 30 days. So it means that if you want to go back and listen to other recordings, they'll go after 30 days. So with the Saturday Ed Chat, I think I'm right in saying they don't record them, so you have to be there live. So it's that whole FOMO thing.
Yeah.
Again, you have to be there live if you want to listen live, and then you get that buzz of being, it feels exclusive. So yeah, absolutely. So they've been doing that for a good amount of time now, and then not in education, but a big fan of Twitter Spaces, a guy called Kevin Healy, who is based in the UK, but he has a Twitter. He's been running Twitter Spaces for ever since I've known about Twitter Spaces, basically. And he also, what's also interesting is he ties that in with a Twitter community. So I don't know if you know, but you can now make your own community on Twitter.
Okay, I saw that, and I think I'm in one with like one person, and I think I think they were just like experimenting, and I was like, yeah, sure, add me, whatever. And it was a friend of mine, and then I don't think he's added anyone else, and I thought, okay, whatever.
So so in the group that he's created, it's got 3,400 members, which is probably the biggest community that there is on in Twitter communities. And it's called Twitter Spaces, so it's obviously focusing on Twitter Spaces. And I listened to quite a few of those recorded, quite a few of those live sessions. They were recorded as well. They were on Sundays at 6:30 in the evening, and then they decided to sort of move them around to cater for different time zones. But then I found that quite annoying because I found 6:30 on a Sunday perfect, and then like with podcasting, consistency is really, or with that sort of Twitter thing, consistency is really important. So if you know that it's going to be at that time on that day, you can plan for it. Whereas if you move it around, it's easy, you can be distracted by something else and like, you're then off on the next thing and you forget about it. Whereas if you know it's always going to be around. So again, if people are interested in having listened to Kevin's spaces, and then again in education, there's a UK educator called Georgina Dean, who is Techie Leader EDU, Techie Leader EDU, and she does a Twitter space on a Sunday evening at 7:00. So you could be able to go along to that, for example, and it's called Sunday Sparks. So if you do a search for hashtag Sunday Sparks, you'll find it. I've not listened to one personally yet, but I've said to Georgina that I will be. I've just been a bit busy.
Right. Basically. Imagine. Yeah, I know. It's like there's so many ways to I just followed her, so I just added her.
Cool.
There's so many ways to engage that, like you said, I mean, I so appreciate the sentiment of like your time is valuable and we don't all have infinite time. Not only is your time valuable, but also it's finite, like you said. So I think when people, and I want to say, Jimmy, I feel like you and I have talked about this, like conferences or being selective about, as you're developing as a teacher, we need some kind of graphic someplace that is like a flow chart or something that says like, first figure out because we keep trying to like, get better at what we are not great at. And to me, that's in a lot of ways pointless. Because I'd rather get like better at the things I'm already pretty okay at, because the other things are going to come along, they're going to come along for the ride. So it's like, focus on the strengths. Don't worry about trying to like, I'm really bad at this. Let me keep trying to make this happen. No, forget about that. Like maybe, but like also no. And so when you're reflecting and figuring out what you want to get better at, what you want to just like keep going, like just stay steady. And then maybe what you want to push off your plate or stop trying to make happen or whatever. To me, it's like you reflect first. And then it's so nice to have those to have those conversations, like you decide some of those things on your own. Like, what do I want to improve? What do I want to keep doing? What do I want to get out of here? Like, goodbye. And then it's like, okay, who can I chat about? How am I going to be accountable to myself or to somebody else? Who can I chat about this with or check in? Or like you said earlier, like just get excited about, okay, I'm going to try this. And, that's the fun part of our job is like, it's a constant experiment, basically. So then do I have people? And then if I've got people, how am I, whether I've met them or not? So is this like an electronic space? Is this, like my colleagues who I have a great relationship with? Like, who am I engaging with and where? And then how often? Because is it like dinner a couple times a month with some colleagues or some friends to keep those relationships going? Or like you said, is it Sunday night? I know that Georgina is going to be live and these are my people. So like how I can't do all the things. How can I be selective about what time I'm using and like who I'm engaging with and who I'm giving that energy to, because all of those things totally have a limit. And I feel like most people I talk to, myself included, like we're all saying like, yeah, I'm trying to cut stuff out I'm trying to do less. I'm trying to do fewer things. So you do get like a little bit selective in terms of topic. And I think in terms of like, how hard is it going to be to engage? Like you said, cameras off, are we doing like, are we on a Zoom, or is this just something I can go click and suddenly my Twitter opens up and I'm like listening to a conversation, just kind of eavesdropping, and it's of value. Super cool.
Yeah, exactly. I know I was nodding along with everything you were saying there, but I think you're exactly right. And I think that that our time is finite. And I think the other thing with audio is, compared to say text or what have you that you can read quickly, with audio, you do need to give some sort of time investment to it, I think. But then the value of doing that, if it's good audio, is amazing. So that's why, I mean, going through that that sort of discover tab on Spaces on the app, very, very quickly, you'll probably see, well, actually there's nothing here that I'm interested in, which is fair enough. But if you find that one gem of a space that you really like, because they're talking about things that you're interested in, then you choose to devote that time to listen to that space, which is amazing. And I think that's exactly right. I think that trying to work out the best ways of using your time, because it is finite, is one of the key 21st century skills, to use a hackneyed expression, I suppose. But I think that's really, really true.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
really true. I mean, we were talking before, we started recording, about the fact that I've decided to set up a new Twitter list. How many Twitter lists does one person need? But anyway, a new Twitter list with
37
with world language educators on it. So people from the States, from Australia, and that's because people like yourself, people like Catherine Usselin and Noah Geisel, who I mentioned that I co-hosted with, I would see their tweets from time to time. They would come off my radar, but actually by sort of spending, let's say, 10, 15 minutes a day or every couple of days, just seeing more regularly what people are tweeting about, you get really, really inspired. And so I know I said this off camera, but I find exactly what you're just saying, Meredith, all the things that you tend to tweet about, all those amazing gifts, I find that really inspiring, and it keeps me going, makes me feel positive about education, technology, and languages. And I know hand on heart, I've learned a great deal from you in the last couple of years. And so I think that if people can find interesting communities to be part of, spaces, etc., they can learn so much from those. But with audio, I think it's trying to find the good stuff can be challenging, and that's why hopefully this discussion will be a nice shortcut for those people who are interested in dipping their toes in Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, well, I so appreciate your kind words. The sentiment is completely mutual. You'll share something, I'm like, how did I not know this? This is awesome. Like, yes, and I'm like, bookmarking. I need to go back and look at my bookmarks. I save a lot of things.
But that's why these Zoom calls, I think, are so good.
Right.
Yeah? Because we can then just have a chat and share. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think of when you say that too about sharing, I think sharing is really, really important. And I often reflect on like how we were, or how I was, but just how in general, how we're sort of raised as teachers. When you're just like a baby teacher, you're like, it's your formative years, in like a different way. It's like everything you see, every interaction. If you're my department chair and you are just incredibly collaborative, so understanding, like whatever, that's going to stick with me. That's going to have to be the experience that I expect from now on, in a really positive way. But if Jimmy's my department chair and listen, Jimmy, you're about to get thrown under the bus here. I was like, no. Like, if Jimmy's my department chair, and I know he would never be this way, but he's super unreasonable. He's unwavering. He's like my way or the highway, micromanaging. And not all of those things are bad, like in isolation. I think there are some things that department chairs should be unwavering about, like collaboration, so it's like, kind of pick your battles kind of a thing. But when you've got somebody who really like kind of traumatizes you professionally, and then people who stay in those situations for like a long time, and that's, so for many teachers, that's all they've ever known, is like not being able to, leave a school or whatever the situation is, like whatever it is that's not working. You can really be hungry for those collaborative conversations. And when they're not happening, and maybe you've never seen it happen, you're not even sure that's a thing people do. I had a lady who I said recently about a department that I was in shared manipulatives. Like, I'm going to use them Wednesday. So I'm going to use the laminated whatever Wednesday. You and I teach the same level. So like, okay, cool. You want to use them Thursday? Awesome. And then we're both going to quiz Friday. So like, let's just swap. Amazing. And you're not in like lockstep, but you're trying to reduce variability as much as possible so that kids aren't, little Johnny isn't like, oh, I have Mr. Dale. All we have is tests. And then they have me and they're like, Miss White's, all we do is games. None of those things are true. But you know how kids are. And so really trying to have that consistent experience. And this lady is like, it was the first conference back, no masks. So like I could see her jaw drop. You know how you can't tell when somebody has a mask on, it's like, that's it. Nothing's shocking or surprising except for like in the eyes. And she was like, and I couldn't tell and so I like stopped and I was like, are you okay? Like everything. And she just said, I didn't even know that was a thing. But she had been, oh, sí, pasa, no hay problema. La luz se apagaron. Anyway, aquí estamos. And so she was like, is that that's a thing that happens to people? I said, yeah, absolutely. Like I've been in departments that share like that. And then not only do they share like that, they share and they work out stuff, they do the pacing calendar together. They make the quiz and the test together. They have these conversations about whatever it is that they're doing or whatever it is that they're reflecting on and trying to do better. And you just forget that people aren't necessarily available in those ways. If you've got people that are raising small children or any age children, but especially small children who need more time and attention, if you are doing that colleague dinner twice a month or once a month and you just have a set time, well, maybe that person can't come. Or if you're meeting after school or if you're meeting before school and you've got daycare things happening, you've got school pickup things happening, like our families, our lives, are these conversations accessible to everyone? How often? What are we talking about? A lot of times they're not. And this sounds super accessible if you can find the right topics. How does one find, like, if I don't know about Georgina, like, how am I finding topics or people, or like, how am I finding conversations that I would be interested in eavesdropping on?
Yeah, now that is a great question. And again, before I start my next bit, I agree with everything that you said. And I think one of the reasons that maybe social audio came off during the pandemic, which is when it all started, was the fact that this sort of human need to express yourself and to talk to other people and connect. But so going back to how do you find spaces that you want to get into? So as a result of all things audio, I heard about Twitter search operators. Have you heard of Twitter search operators?
No.
You're going to love this. Okay,
Ooh,
so
I can't wait.
If you do a search for Twitter search operators, then what you'll find is lots of little codes and keywords that you can put into Twitter, which are the equivalent of when you go to advanced search in Twitter. It's basically the same sorts of things. So you can, for example, search between such and such a date, or you can search for like not just one keyword but two keywords together. So I'd heard on All Things Audio that there was a Twitter search operator, which I hadn't heard about before. What's Twitter search operator? So then I had to look for it. But one of the Twitter search operators is spaces. So for example, if you put in filter :spaces, then you'll find all the spaces, or if you do a search for like a keyword plus that that search operator, filter :spaces, then you'll find hopefully spaces around that particular search. But another search operator is for language. So if you put in filter :spaces space lang :es, then you'll find spaces which are in Spanish. Now, it might be that you find inappropriate content in those spaces, but if you want, as an adult, I'm not suggesting this for children, but as an adult, if you want to listen to authentic Spanish speakers, then that's a great way of doing that. And it's going to be in real time. Now, if you want to do the equivalent for French, it'll be FR instead of ES, and for German, it'll be DE. So you just have to find the equivalent language code. Now, in addition to Twitter search operators, which I've been doing quite a lot of research about recently, you can do other things, like you can put in filter : follows plus a keyword. And if you do that, it means anybody that's you're following that has tweeted using that keyword, it will then come up. So for example, I was at the Bet Show recently, which, if people don't know, is a massive, exhibition in London, all around EdTech. So I just did a search for filter follows and the hashtag Bet 2022.
Okay.
And then I could then immediately see anybody who I was following on Twitter who was at the Bet Show live, which was really, really cool. And then and also for if you have lists, so for example, the MFL Twitterers list, which I manage, you have a number for that list. So if you put in list : and then the number that goes with that particular list and do a keyword search, then it will just search that list that you've curated.
Cool.
No, I'm not joking. It's really, really cool. It's really, really cool. If, for example, maybe we'll come on to this later, but I've created a wakelet showcasing all the podcasts that I've appeared on since the start of the pandemic. It's about 12 or 13 now. Now, to find this, all I did was I put from : Joe Dale. So it's either from or to.
Could I do that like in live, like in real time?
Yeah,
right now?
do it now. Yeah, do it now. Yeah, so right. Then put no, you don't need the @ sign. Don't put the @ sign.
No way.
And there's no, that's it. There's no space after the colon. Is that right?
Oh.
No space after the colon.
Okay.
Otherwise it won't. That's it. Perfect. Then go to the end of mine. Right. Then put in URL. So
space or no space?
Space URL : and then WKE. And the reason it's WKE is because when you share a wakelet collection, it always has WKE.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you wanted to find out a YouTube clip that you've tweeted recently, you put URL : YouTube. And right, so that's now top, right? If you click on latest, and there it is.
No way. That is, hey, that's me. Just us tweeting back and forth. Shut up. That is so cool. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So another thing you can do is you can do the since and until operator.
Oh yeah.
So if it's like a Twitter chat, and you want to remember, if you haven't connected all the tweets from a particular chat, you can just put the dates in from the since and until for that particular day, and then all the tweets will then come up. So that's a really nice way of
all I've ever done is like look for a tweet where I was like, okay, I know somebody shared, so and so shared like this project, and I remember it was like this night on Lang Chat, and I'm been trying to find like keywords, but this is so much faster. I don't know. Yeah. Like so much more specific.
Another good one is filter : media. So it means that if you tweeted something, or someone's tweeted something which includes an image or a video, just put in filter : media, and then put, for yourself, if you put then from : and then your Twitter handle, then you'll see and you click on latest with the results, you'll see all the latest media, GIFs, etc. that you've been tweeting.
Oh yeah. Oh, I tried to find a GIF thing I did the other day, and then I realized here's what I did. I did myself and just GIF, and then it gives you every GIF you've ever put in a tweet. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get hundreds of these. I could have used like a more specific, it was like every response ever with a GIF. And I was like, nope, okay, not what I needed.
Another good one is to find out which is the tweet that's been most favorited that you've tweeted, or that someone else has tweeted. Yeah. So for example, let's do it for you right now. So if we put in, let me think, just put in your handle without the @ sign.
Okay.
Okay. Then space, then MIN _ faves, FAVES. And then what number? What do you think's been the most the most favorited tweet?
Or maybe like number of like.
Should we put like 100? Should we try 100?
Yeah, I'd say 100.
Okay, so try 100 with no. Yeah, that's it. Right, then press enter and let's see what comes up. There you go. So all the ones that are there will have at least 100 favorites. So all you have to do is just keep adding the number, making the number higher and higher and higher until you can find your most favorited tweet.
Oh, interesting. There's no way that I have any with 3, but it's gonna be.
Let's find out. You never know.
Oh, maybe 1. Oh yeah, that's right. Sometimes I do store like the stuff I really like in tampon boxes. Because the kids, if they ever, I know, thank you, you're welcome, Jimmy. If the kids, because I'm just always suspicious that because you know how they are, kids are sneaky. So if they open it up and they're like looking for like, oh, she got the gum out of here, they're gonna be horrified. So I always, I hide the good pens, the black Sharpies, all of those. Yeah, I hide those in. Oh, that got 470. That's gotta be. Yeah, there's no way. What a shame. That's my most liked tweet. Oh, it's amazing. I didn't even know that got that many. That's really funny. Oh,
so there we
what
are.
A time to be alive. January 2020. We had no idea.
Exactly. And then you can do other things, like, as I said, with the sits and the until ones, you can find out when your first tweet was, what your first tweet was, or what someone else's first tweet was, and that sort of thing. Yeah. So it's just, you'll be there for hours. It's fascinating.
Hours. Yeah. What a rabbit hole. Jeez Louise. Look at these. You have so many, like, well, I get like 30 likes and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's the one that's had that's 225. That's been the one that was most favorited. Yeah.
Oh, I love Sylvia Duckworth. Anything they do. Oh, amazing. That's fantastic. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So then once you filter it down, remind me what you said at the beginning about searching for spaces.
Yeah. So for spaces, it's filter : spaces.
There we go.
There you go. And then if you do another space, LANG : EN.
That's right. That's what you were saying about the languages. Okay, cool.
So that would be in English. If you wanted ones in Spanish, it'd be ES, etc. Or FR for French, or DE for German. Yeah. So if you wanted the there you go. So all the results will either be ones that are happening right now live, or ones you can schedule, or ones you can listen to the playback as long as it's 30 days or less.
Right. Super cool. So you're right. Like that is very like Clubhouse to me, where you could have like, you can use it as an authentic resource and also like to develop professionally or whatever. That is super, super cool. Can I do spaces with also like, if you're hosting a space, can I go like, hey, the next time Joe Dale does a space, I want to be, could I put like from plus?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think what you'd have to do is you'd have to, if you did a search for someone's name, like filter spaces, Joe Dale, then you'll see either ones I've recorded or ones that which I haven't, because I haven't hosted. I've only personally hosted like a couple, but I've attended quite a few because I'm sure you're the same. I'm lurking and learning.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I can like work out the grammar of the Twitter space first of all. There you go. Let's see what happens now. Oh, interesting.
Nothing. Okay. Wonder. No, I don't know. Just for funsies, I'll put that now. Okay, just for fun. Darn. Okay, we're gonna play around with that. Yeah, I'm gonna play around with that for sure. Because you could. Oh, this thing's gonna beep as per usual. I could do like. Can I do a space with the search term like classroom organization?
So if you want, hang on. I would maybe like with filter spaces that you just have to do. I'm not sure if that will work with a keyword.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So it's in lots of these things. It's just sort of seeing how it works really and working out what works and what doesn't work.
Is super cool.
Yeah.
And now I know what happens when my palm hits the button, and I'm like, "There's a voice. Who's the man in my car?
Yeah.
What's going on?"
Yeah.
This is super cool. So I think, I'm gonna have to suggest this to the friends who were, like I said, we were chatting about like a way we could, it's a Sunday night or Monday. We kind of like to keep things in the week. I kind of like to leave weekends wide open for funsies, but Monday nights at 7, always chatting about X or Y. Super cool. And then if you could find, it seems like once you built your repertoire of people are hosting different spaces on topics that you find interesting or in the target language or whatever, you could then set those reminders as you can do
Yes.
and all those kind of things. Do those come in the form of a Twitter notification?
Yes, they do. Yeah,
Cool.
that's right. So
Gotcha.
so it'll come up on your when it's about to start. It will say so and so has just started his space or her space.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, no,
fantastic.
exactly that. And I think what's interesting at this point is the fact that there are so few. Well, as far as I can see, there are so few educators using spaces, and I wonder why that is. If they don't know about it, or they just don't know
Yeah.
the etiquette of it. So yeah, I mean, for
I think
example,
all of the above.
for example, I saw that Dr. Liam Printer, he did one Twitter space in January, and he had a really good response and everything. And then there was Brett Salakis, who is based in Australia, who did a couple, I think, in February, but then sort of stopped, as it were. And I saw as well that that there's been a Lang Chat community.
Okay.
The Twitter community made, but it's got 99 members. I wanted to check before I came on to get the exact number. So 99 members, but there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no Twitter space chat that's happening.
Right.
But it'd be great, wouldn't it?
I know Nalan Taylor has done one. I think she was the host. She was the facilitator of Lang Chat. It's been a while now. Last semester, I think so, at the last part of the last year, and that was her preferred medium. She said, "I want to try it on Twitter Spaces," and I was like, "I don't know what that means, but sure." Like,
yeah,
let me know if you need help. But I love that, and that feels weird. Like when you have, like the last couple of years in teaching, we all kind of figured out what was really centered to our teaching identity pretty quickly, because if it wasn't technology, you realize that. If it was technology, you realize that. And technology is so personal that, like, when I didn't know what she was talking about, I felt like some kind of way about that. I was like, I don't know what that is, but have fun. And then I was like, but what is that? Like, should I want to know. I enjoy that part of like teaching and just of life or whatever. And I've always been that way. So it felt a little bit like I was missing out. And then like I said, I pieced it together where I was like, oh, that's that thing that I didn't realize was a thing, because they've got them, when you go home, they'll have them right up at the top there. I don't know if an Android's the same way, but they'll have like spaces, suggested spaces. I think
that's right.
A lot of your,
that's right.
Like people you follow are all in the same one. It's like, did you want to listen?
Yeah.
Can you imagine in real life walking by a crowd of people, and just there's like this thing above their heads that says, do you want to listen? Don't talk, but like, do you want to eavesdrop? Yeah, I'd love to. So I've seen that a couple of times and been like, I don't want to like join because I don't know the like miking situation and am I unmuted? Like, But I think what you said, like that kind of a thing, plus like finding topics, plus finding people. I assume a lot of educators like don't have the time for that. And if they do have the time, they don't have the bandwidth to like tackle all that or any new things. So I think all those things you mentioned are exactly the barriers.
Yeah, I mean, one thought I had a few months ago was to start a Twitter space and call it Ask Joe Dale. So the idea would be, I'd create a Google form.
Cool.
I'd then run that for say 2 weeks, and I'd ask people to write in questions around EdTech and languages, and then in the live Twitter space, I would then ask the people who've asked the questions to come along to the Twitter space, and then I would then try my best in a very sort of impromptu way to say, okay, so I've had this question from Meredith, this is my answer, then ask Meredith to then give her response, or ask anyone else in the room if they, how they would answer that question. Or maybe I was thinking a little bit like in the UK, we have question time, which is like you have like a panel of say 5 people.
Okay.
Normally you have politicians and then someone from showbiz and someone from wherever it might be,
sure,
and they
absolutely.
Then you have the question, and then they all answer. So the idea would be, I would ask, say, different people who I know a lot about this area, and then I could then once I've given my answer, revert to them and see what they would say, and then get some audience participation. That would be the idea. But I got too busy in a way. Well, essentially it was my plan B. Because I've been going to Dublin for a few courses recently, and then I was in let me think. I was there in October 2020, 21, and it was all going swimmingly, and I was thinking this is going to be amazing. And then I had 2 courses in February and 2 in March of this year cancelled because of Omicron. So I was thinking, oh no, I've got to have plan B, which what you have to do all the time as a freelancer.
Oh, absolutely.
So I was thinking, well, I'll have the Ask Joe Dale idea. So I've done all the assets and everything for it, and the idea was I would then record it as a podcast, put it onto Vimeo, but make it password protected. I know this sounds a bit complicated.
Absolutely.
And then put the link into a Twitter newsletter, which you can have pinned to your timeline or to your profile, and you can charge for Twitter newsletters. So I was thinking, maybe $5 a month or something, and then people get access to listen to the recording. Plus, I could then write in the newsletter, I could write, my 5 favorite Chrome extensions for this week or whatever it might be. So, cool. But I shelved that when all of a sudden I was then able to go back to Dublin and the courses were running and all the rest of it. So it's, so I've made the time to do the research, but then I haven't got the time now to actually do it. But it's always there. It's in my back pocket, and I could always try it at any point. But it's interesting. It's interesting. So I don't know what you thought about that idea, but I think the idea of maybe trying to spearhead a Twitter conversation around different topics and then see how many people were to come along. It'd be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's like my mind's exploding now with ideas where, again, like you want to, you're always going to, whatever platform you choose, you're always going to have to some degree. It's like, it's so important to make things accessible for, every level of technology, every level of exposure, whatever. And I think often, I don't know if you guys have this in the UK, but we have like homeowners associations where like your whole neighborhood is like managed by a thing. So you kind of have like rules and you pay some kind of dues, but the dues go towards like maintenance of the shared space. Like if you're in a big neighborhood, because like who cuts that grass over there, or if there's like a pool situation, a playground, it's like people who keep things up to date and that money goes towards that. And just some common norms of like, don't park in the street, because ours is very like windy. So if you park in the street, suddenly you're like, well, you come around the corner and somebody's right there. So our HOA says like no parking in the street and that kind of thing. No visible like garbage out by your house, that needs to be like around the corner, that kind of thing. And but they have the HOA page is on Facebook, and that's fine, but like I have no idea how the people who don't engage in Facebook get the information. So I can't help but wonder if that isn't a little bit of, kind of lowercase g gatekeeping. And I think about sometimes the valuable conversations that we have on Lang Chat and the things I see from like MFL Twitterati and all these different things. And I'm like, man, how do we get more people like exposed to this besides just going, hey, if you're not on teacher Twitter, you should, that kind of thing. Yeah. And this to me seems like the most accessible option of something that you still have to like have an account for, or whatever. Like you said, just lurking and learning. Even I've told teachers like, you don't even have to don't like allow anybody to follow you. Like you can totally stay protected or whatever, but follow these people, get a username that is nothing identifiable. It's just like user 7432H, whatever, don't even put a picture and just lurk in Lang Chat, bookmark stuff, lurk in MFL Twitterati, like just kind of be in all these places. The only tricky part is getting people to join. They're like, I don't want Twitter. Twitter's where irrelevant stuff hangs out. And I'm like, yeah, kind of, but also no.
But I also think it's really interesting that sort of the power of the human voice and the idea of being able to come together in a Twitter space, let's say, and everyone can chat, and you can actually hear that person's voice, and you get a different impression of that person. If you maybe have been following them for in some cases maybe years, but you've never actually heard their voice, it can give a really good impression. So I'm a real big fan of audio and the way it can convey different meanings in your voice. I just think maybe we just need a few more people trying out Twitter Spaces in education and just seeing where that takes us. And maybe that's the thing at the moment. I don't know, but I think it's been really lovely to sort of come on and to have a chat with you about Twitter Spaces.
It's been so enjoyable. I'm like got so many ideas now, and now that you mentioned like Catherine and Noah, I'm gonna be like texting them afterwards, being like, hey, do you guys want to, like start a thing? because I think maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's our next like webinar series is like, get on Twitter, you know, and it's not a webinar series. It's just like a Twitter Spaces, like you said, question Q&A. It could be, you know, pre-submitted. Really, it's wide open to whatever. And I think that's super, super cool. And just a different access point for entry point for people who, again, want to engage in conversations, or like you said, tone is so lost sometimes. I get so frustrated with Twitter because it cuts you off. You know, you got to really like it really is microblogging. I have no idea how we did it back when it was even fewer characters, but
140.
Yeah. I mean, crazy. And so I get frustrated with Twitter sometimes because just as a generally empathetic and empathic and sensitive person, I'm like, what did he mean by that? Like, what's that supposed to mean? You know, how you're like, and then you have to be like, we're teachers, so it's like, no, knock it off. Like, don't have feelings. You know, like there's nothing's personal, but it's so helpful to hear, like you said, people's voices, especially if there's somebody like you said that you followed for years or that you've never met, but whose work you've kept. There's so many people whose work I've kept up with, and I've only met on Twitter, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be so starstruck if I met so-and-so, because we've only ever talked like on the computer. But if you've never heard their voice, that's a huge difference. And things can really come across so differently. It makes all the difference in the world, I think, to hear someone's message come directly from them. That's something that frustrates me quite often about Twitter, is you get cut off, and then you've also got to navigate the threads and then the replies to the thread. And you're like, hold on, this was a great conversation, but it got lost. Like I didn't. And so I just end up getting like, I follow along and then I'm like, oh, good point. Okay. That's true. That's valid. And then I kind of lose it because I think I lose interest of the like having to follow. But if you could hear it process out in real time, how powerful is that?
I think that's really true. But I also think, as I was saying earlier, about audio is slow compared to reading text.
Yeah.
So what you've just described could be very quick, but the time you need to invest in listening to the conversation,
right?
You'd have to allocate more time. But then if you knew that it's going to be yourself, Noah, Catherine, etc., you know that the content's going to be really good.
Yeah.
You'll then decide to dedicate that time. And I mean, if you were to run with that, I would think that would be amazing. Just please make it so it's not in the middle of the night if you're in the UK.
So we're like, Joe, are you there? It's 3 a.m.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No, I'm kidding. No, absolutely. That would be super cool.
I think Noah's been in a few. I think Noah's done a few spaces, but I don't know if Catherine's done any yet.
Because like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's exactly it. So that's something like a chat workout time. And my thing too was I was thinking like, I often listen to like podcasts and different things like during my commute, which is not long. So if you've got people that have those, those longer commutes or whatever, it's such a nice time to listen to these just without the video, because you're driving and all that kind of thing. Like just to chat. What I love is there's a couple of podcasts that have two different kinds of episodes that I really enjoy. And one of them is they'll have a weekly longer episode, and then they'll have like a bi-weekly shorter episode. And it really is just them kind of chatting and catching up, but they have it structured in like, they say like, okay, what's your hooray this week? What's your like, screw it. Like what's your just like, forget about it this week. And then, and so I've talked with those friends that I mentioned earlier. We've talked about like doing a podcast, and we're all like, no, we already do too many things. There's no way. But like, this could be really cool because you could be like, what's your yay? What's your nay? And what's next? You could just have like, we're going to sit down on a Sunday night at 6 p.m. and just chat. And it's just voice on voice. And it's just like three friends kind of going around, back and forth. And what value, if you knew that you followed those people, like if Catherine and Noah had a Spaces, I would be like,
exactly,
like, get me in there, because I already know and appreciate and admire their work.
Yeah.
How engaging would that be just by default?
Yeah. Exactly. That's and that's what we need to try and encourage people to do, because I think there would be so much value in doing that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We need to plot immediately. Jimmy, get on Twitter so that we can. Oh, I forgot you still have a student in detention. Sorry. Mr. Tremblay's the best. Sorry, student. But also, what did you do in detention? It's May. Yeah, keep it together, everybody. Alicia Quintero, who is at Clase Castellano on Twitter, she said something great like months ago to me. She was like, you just got to keep the jack in the box, like don't let the crazy. I thought that was such a funny phrase. Like, so listen, student of Senora Tremblay, keep the jack in the box. All right. It's May 17th. Like, just keep it the crazy in for like another week or so. Yeah, no, now we've got a plan. Now we've got a plot. And now listen, this is going to happen now because that's so cool. I'm not kidding you. When I clicked it, I was like, oh no, I have clicked on something like crazy. So I was so grateful when you suggested it, because I thought, yes, that is the thing that I totally ignore at the bottom of the Twitter app. I'm like, I don't know what that microphone is, but I don't care. Like, next. That is super, super cool.
Well,
Joe,
have a listen to the All Things Audio podcast. So what I did, I started from the first one. I think I just caught whatever it was, episode 20 or something. I just went back to number 1, went through the whole back catalogue on my daily walk, and I've caught up now, and and you'll learn so much from it, and I think as well, to start off with, it's all about managing the space. And you've got things like you've got a thing called the Nest, which is a bit confusing when you first hear about it. For a few episodes I was thinking, why do they keep talking about this Nest? So the Nest, once you launch a Twitter space, you have an area at the top where you can basically add things to the Nest. So what Madeline does, so I basically worked out all this, like the etiquette of doing it. What Madeline does is she favorites all the tweets she wants to put into the Nest before time. And then when she's talking live, she's then able to add them in live, and other speakers, not like just audience members, but other speakers can add things to the Nest. So I think they don't tend to do that, but they could if they wanted to. And then what she does is she then makes a Twitter moment, which is a bit like Wakelet, but the equivalent for Twitter afterwards, and then puts the whole thing out as one link. Yeah. So I think to start off with, for anyone listening to this, I would say just spend some time working out how to give people the microphone. You could do things like do hand claps and stuff like that. And there used to be a 100 symbol, which they got rid of, and there were lots of people up in arms about that because they really like the 100, which is basically, I totally agree with what you just said. You'd put the 100 score up. But there's a few emojis there that you can use. And I think I'm right in saying that there's one with if you want to have different colored skin, you just hold your finger down on the emoji, and then you get the different color ranges as well, which is really cool. Yeah, there we are.
Holy cow, I can't wait to try this. It's just gonna be me. I'm gonna screw it up, and it's just gonna be me in my car, like humming along to, like, I don't know, Journey or something on the way home, and I'm not gonna realize it's like live, and I'll just be like, whatever. No,
I think you'd be a perfect host, Meredith, because you're so good spontaneously. You'd be able to just pick up on it.
I mean, it's so fun. Like, it would have to be, you'd have to be comfortable with that. So which, like, we're teachers, right? So we're like, oh, what'd you just say? Kid in detention, still talking to you in Senor Tremblay. I'm just kidding. This poor kid. But no, like, that's right. The kids just say whatever, and we're like, oh, well, that's a thing you just said in front of everyone, so now I have to react to it. I think that could be really cool for teachers, because it is those spontaneous conversations that you would have if you live, Jimmy, obviously you're in the UK. Jimmy, I know, for example, is in Indiana. And I'm just using him because he's the other face I see here. But like, if we did work together, that's exactly what we'd be doing, kind of riffing, riffing off each other and laughing, or sharing ideas. And so you'd have to, if you had some people who were really comfortable with that, what fun that could be. And again, it's just sort of like you're like on their little Jiminy Cricket on the shoulder, little fly on the wall of like conversation. What a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
Man,
absolutely. There we are. Well, as we've been talking for over an hour and 10 minutes now, that's fine. It's 10:10 in the UK right now, and I'm sort of keeping my eyes open, just about. But I think maybe this is we've reached a right moment with the excitement and everything. We've given people a mission to try out Twitter Spaces,
absolutely,
and see what they think. Maybe it's time to start to consider wrapping up. What do you think?
No, absolutely. Graciana just said thank you so much, and I can hear all the custodians rolling down the all the like rolly trash cans down the hall. I started organizing today, which was like a bad idea, because you know how you get into something and then you're like, well, now I have to finish. So I've also got boxes everywhere. So I'll finish that and you'll go to bed. And I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been so enjoyable.
My pleasure.
It always is, but man, like I have so many ideas now, and I'm super excited. I need to check it out. I want to check it out for like some like Spanish resources first, just as a professional, just for language maintenance, and then I need to get with a couple people, and we need to see like what we can do. I'm also going to look into privacy. Do you have anything? You have to let people in, right? Like when you're doing one, you give permission for people to be able to like contribute, so you wouldn't just have somebody like Twitter space bomb you.
The way that you set it up when you're starting a space is you choose whether you want to have it so that people have to request the mic, which is should be the default one. So you can't you can't get anybody coming into a space and
all of a sudden
and excuse me, and taking the mic and saying inappropriate things. They would have to request the mic. You would have to give permission. So what they say on All Things Audio is they always, when someone requests the mic, you can tap on that person's avatar and it will allow you to go to their profile. And if their profile looks dodgy or doesn't have anything in their profile, or it just has like, you know, numbers, let's say, then it's up to you to then choose not to give them permission. So actually it's a very safe environment. Obviously once there's talking, then you don't you know, you can actually, that said, actually you can mute people. You can even remove people from the space if you want to. So there's actually quite a lot of control in that way. But what people tend to do is they tend to sort of make it clear that it's time to move on to another thing. Or what some people do is they talk about resetting the room. So they'll say, okay, we've just had this, we've just been talking about this for a bit. We're now going to reset the room. So they'll actually say, reset the room. Now we're going to talk about this. So if you've got someone who maybe is, you know, going off on their typical diatribe and they always say the same thing, for example, then you can sort of politely come in and then suggest that we reset the room, etc. So the most important thing is if you're the host, then you're, as in the classroom situation, you're the person in charge. So it's up to you to manage the space in the way that you see fit. And also you can have a co-host as well. I think you can have two co-hosts now, but when it first started, you can only have a host, whereas you can have a co-host that can be doing some of the things like approving people and what have you. Because if you're the host and you're doing everything, like you're approving people, you're watching the chat, you're watching what's in the nest, it's a lot. So if you have a co-host, that's what Madeline and Suze do, then it makes it a lot easier. So I'd recommend, if you were to do this, you know, seriously, as it were, that you'd have like a couple of co-hosts in addition.
Man, thank you so much. This is so awesome. I'm like 100. This is happening 100%. Man, very cool.
Cool. Well, I will be there as long as it's not the middle of the night. I will be there, Meredith.
That's right. Exactly. Like I said, we'll push it earlier. That way you can be there. 5 hours. Okay, cool. Joe can come. Joe, thank you again so much. I so appreciate your time. And I know in the chat, people said thank you as well. So
yeah, thank you for everyone watching live. And thank you for your lovely comments. And those people watching the recording, thank you as well. And feel free to share this video far and wide.
Yeah.